Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th Annual Podcast Awards Slate announcement. My name is Todd Cochrane, and I want to welcome you to the 8th Annual event. I'm really excited to share some great information with you guys tonight and also share a lot of details about the whole nomination process, what we saw in in reviewing the super plethora of shows that were nominated. But as a way of introduction, again, my name is Todd Cochrane. I'm the founder of the Podcast Awards. This is the 8th annual event. And what we've done over the past 8 years is try to recognize shows in the podcasting space that have great engagement, great fans, and great sites to go along with it. Hey, I'm also the founder of the Tech Podcast Network over at techpodcast.com, and I'm also a podcaster. I do a podcast twice weekly over at geeknewscentral.com, so definitely get over there and check that out. I just passed my 800th show here last month, so I tell you, if you're new to podcasting, wait to get up to that 800 number. It becomes routine, but nothing is routine tonight. We've got a great lineup for you. And really, the basis of the awards when we first started was a way to give back and to recognize shows that were really going the extra mile in really trying to build an audience and do great things. And the space has changed, obviously, over the past 8 years, but one thing that hasn't is our listeners and viewers that watch our shows. And really, the Podcast Awards is about the people's choice. The people come in, and listeners come in and nominate the shows that have been nominated. And I tell you, we've got a great lineup for you tonight, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of the podcasting space before we get into the actual slate. But I do want to make a couple of quick announcements. If your show makes the slate tonight, I need to hear from you within the next 5 days. So, okay, if you're catching this later, I need you to contact me within the next 5 days. And please send me an email at podcast@podcastconnect.com. It's real easy because we're going to get you connected for what we're going to be doing at the awards ceremony. We've had a fantastic announcement where Leo Laporte over at twit.tv has agreed to be our MC. So we're going to have a great show for you at the Podcast Awards that is going to be happening, I believe, let me look at the calendar. I should have had this wrote down. It's going to be on, I believe, January 7th. Of course, the one thing I don't write down tonight. Yes, it'll be Monday, January 7th. And, of course, it's going to happen in conjunction with the new Media Expo. So if you want to collect your trophy, you're going to have to come to the awards ceremony. We're going to try to get all of the 220 shows to the awards ceremony. Plus, we've got room for your fans as well. We're going to be opening up a pre-registration for you to basically RSVP for the awards ceremony here in the next couple of days, and I'll be providing you a link to that website where you can to pre-register. We're also going to be giving some great discounts to actually attend the show for everyone that has made the slate. Every show that has been nominated, we're going to be trying to reach out to you and also offering you up a discount on getting access to the show as well. So again, if you make the slate tonight, I need to hear from you as soon as possible. Podcastconnect.com. Send me your name, your telephone number, and your show name, and that will really help me out a lot. So turn your fans into podcasters and invite them to New Media Expo. Well, I tell you, we got one thing about this event, and I just have to tell you guys that the folks over at New Media are really going to be helping us out here, and so definitely check out the New Media Expo website. This is really critical for you to go over there and check it out. This is a great event. Go to nmxlive.com is the website, nmxlive.com. But this event would not be possible without our sponsors. I'm going to tell you, our sponsors have really stepped up this year. We weren't able to make our goal last year in getting trophies, but we are past goal. We have made the minimum amount of money that I needed to get to pay for the $3,700 for all of the trophies for all the categories. Plus, we've got enough money to pay the administrator and the accounting firm. And so it looks like this year I won't have to be digging into my own checkbook. So we want to thank all the sponsors. And I want to start off by talking about our corporate sponsors for just a second. I want to thank Cliff over at Podcast Answer Man for being one of our corporate sponsors. You definitely want to check Cliff's site out. There's a link to his site via his banner at the podcastawards.com website. Definitely check Cliff's site out as well. And of course, we also want to thank Entrepreneurs on Fire for being one of our corporate sponsors as well. And really, that's what it's all about. These two groups have really came in and really supported us in a big, big way. As well, we've also had some support as well from my company over at Raw Voice and helping us with the hosting of this event tonight and basically taking care of the bandwidth. And definitely want to thank them for helping us get the word out as well. But really, what it boiled down to is what really helps us make goal on all of our sponsorship is the actual podcast sponsors that come in. We had Geek News Central, which is my own show, which I sponsor every year, even though that I'm a host. I provide money to this. We also want to thank the folks that are actually going to help you become a better blogger. So all these sites are linked at podcastawards.com. So definitely check it out. And of course, we want to thank the folks. Oops, make sure I got the right button here. Want to thank the folks at Your Boss Blows Make Money Online. So that link is at podcastawards.com. Also, How to Program with Java is one of our sponsors. We want to thank Jeffrey Powers over at Day in Tech History for his sponsorship of his podcast sponsorship as well. And then we'll get into the rest of our podcast sponsors. Comedy Forecast. I want to, this show has been a sponsor here for at least the past 4 or 5 years. And so definitely check out his show at comedyforecast.com. Of course, the folks over the other side of, the other side of live. And again, all these links are at podcastawards.com. And we want to thank the folks over at the Pokemon Podcast as well. Folks at mousechat.net. And of course, we've got some very, very cool. These folks have a great show. I've been listening to it. It's called New Wax Podcast. Go over and check it out. And if you're in the business, of course, the Great Business Project Podcast as well. And we also got some prize sponsors this year as well. And the folks over at Music Radio have basically come up, and every winner of every category is going to get some cool audio clips. So you want to thank them for their sponsorship as well. Really, the sponsors really have allowed us to do things this year that we haven't been able to do in the past. And I definitely want to thank them. But more importantly, I want to thank the 44 listeners that put in over 700 hours of work to review. Each of the 44 listeners got 4 categories to review. And typically it takes 3 to 4 hours to review a category. And because there was so many shows that got nominated this year, and actually in the, every category had we would normally send over 20, the top 20 that was nominated. But this year we had to send over the top 50 because the delta was so tight on so many shows. So they spent a lot of time doing reviews. So each category got looked at extensively. And I feel we have a great slate for you tonight. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. So let's just talk about a few stats about what happened during the nomination period. We had over 9 million listener and viewer nominations over that 15-day period. The top nomination day, we had over 500,000 nominations come in. We had 5,000 shows that were actually nominated this year. That was almost double. Matter of fact, almost triple of what it was last year. And the average listener nominated 8 shows when they came and visited the website, which was incredible. Usually it's been 3 to 4. So meaning most shows got 200 plus nominations alone. So that just kind of gives you an idea where it's at. Now, some shows obviously had lower numbers and some shows had bigger numbers, but that was kind of the average that we saw during a nomination period. So what I want to do is I want to share with you some of the data that we found during the actual review process. And this is what I refer to as my state of the podcasting sphere. And this is really gives some detailed information. This is more for the podcasters out there to understand what we saw when we were looking at your sites. And I tell you, there's a lot of disheartening information in here, but also a lot of positive information as well. And I got a little bit to talk about to those of you that are doing video and some of the things that you may be doing wrong. But I'll go through some of these stats so that you guys will get a feel. So you get a pen and paper ready, and I'll share this, or actually you'll be able to watch this later on replay. So luckily, only 10% had generic-looking pages like a Libsyn page or similar generics. Basically, they actually had branding wrapped around them. So 90% of the actual websites that we looked at actually had great branding, which is actually a great improvement over what we've seen in the past couple of years. Sound and audio quality was fantastic across the board. Very few shows had a low quality audio. There was some Blog Talk Radio folks. The audio was absolutely horrendous. So, if you're looking for audio quality, definitely don't be hosting your audio over there. If you do, record it separately, put it up separately as a podcast, but do not distribute that audio from that website. 27% of the sites made you dig for their show, aka when you went to the homepage, you're like, where's their podcast? And some had a podcast link, some didn't, but 27% of you made us dig to figure out where your show is actually at on your website. 34% of sites did not have a way to play or download the media on the page, which I found absolutely incredible at this state in the game with the number of plugins that are available for podcasting, why people didn't have a download link or a play button on their page. You can almost bet that those sites did not make the slate just because of really a weak site design. Now, here's where it really blew us away was 73% of the video podcasters did not have embeds for their listeners. And they had a video up on their site, but no way to embed and take that and share that somewhere. So what's even more disheartening is 70% of the video podcasters did not have an RSS feed for their video. They were putting their video up on Blip or Vimeo or YouTube, but there was no way to subscribe to that video podcast. There was the audio portion that they were doing, that they were posting, but you couldn't find a feed for the video. So if you wanted to subscribe to the video feed, you couldn't. So it just goes to tell me that a lot of shows, while they think they're video podcasting, they truly are not. Only 9% of sites had invalid podcast RSS feeds, which is down considerably. Again, a number of folks think they're podcasters just by putting their video up on YouTube. We couldn't find them in iTunes. So nearly 8% of the shows, audio and video, we couldn't find in iTunes. We couldn't find an RSS feed, nothing. It was just like, you're a podcaster, but YouTube is, that's a great place to distribute your content, but you're not podcasting. 33% of shows had an RSS icon on their default landing page. It was a blog feed only, which is smart. 49% had an RSS icon on their default landing page. It was podcast ready. In other words, a podcast dedicated feed. 23% had a podcast RSS feed buried on a subpage that we finally found. So we had to dig. But 28% of shows did not have an RSS feed or an iTunes feed that we could find. So we were digging, trying to find the links. And sometimes we got lucky and sometimes we didn't. 71% of shows are still using FeedBurner. I'm telling you, with FeedBurner being up in the air and the issues that they're having there and what we're seeing with slow update times and all that stuff, really consider a strategy on FeedBurner. And really, I've never been a fan of FeedBurner, but with Google not having touched it in years, it's just one of those services that's really making us nervous right now. And our number one over at Raw Voice, our number one ticket, the support ticket comes in for people that are having troubles with FeedBurner updating. So a lot of you are out there on FeedBurner. Have a backup plan if FeedBurner ever goes away. Not saying that it is, and don't want to be an alarmist, but have a plan, okay? 26% of shows have an RSS feed larger than the 250 kilobits allowable via the iTunes spec. 61% had a visible iTunes subscription icon on their default landing page. 57% had a visible iTunes subscription icon someplace in their website. 12% had a visible email contact on their address. So that means 98% of you don't want your fans sending you an email. And that just blows me away. You're not looking for feedback from your audience. So 12%, only 12% of you had a visible email contact. 8% of you had a newsletter sign-up page. 21% had a call-in number or a widget for listeners to leave an audio comment for the show. 90% of the shows had 90% of the sites had their own .coms, which I applaud. That number's up dramatically. It's nothing like having your own .com, having your own property, having your own brand. 73% had less than one paragraph of show notes for their past 5 podcasts, which really doesn't help you when Google comes calling and tries to index you. So have some show notes. Have something on there that's going to describe what is in each episode. 63% of shows were creating audio only. 18% were creating video only. 16% of shows were blogging as well as some form of podcast content, which is pretty good. I'm really surprised. So that number's up. So some of you are blogging, also doing audio. Some of you are blogging and also doing video. But 23% of the sites were creating audio, video, and also doing blog posts. And from what I'm going to share with you a little later on some stats, those shows are going to win big time. 31% of sites were mobile ready. iPhone, Android were basically you could go there and you could see the sites with a iPhone or an Android. 12% did not have their shows listed on Blueberry.com. That shows most of them did, which is great. 60% had a Twitter link on their website. 72% had a Facebook link on their website. So more of you had a Facebook or a Twitter link than you did an RSS feed for people to subscribe to your shows, which blows me away. 15% had a Google link, a Google Plus link. Now, here's where it really gets down in the dirt. And I'm going to get into the announcement here in just a minute, but I'm going to share some last stats with you. 25% of shows did a weekly podcast. 23% of the shows did more than one episode per week. The rest of the shows were less than 1 week or greater, basically, or 1 week, basically, maybe once every 2 weeks, once a month. So here's what we did. We pulled some stats, and what we know and what I could tell from what we've seen in our databases I have access to over at Raw Voice and Blueberry Stats, shows that do weekly shows grow at about a 10%. Shows that do not do a weekly show grow at 10 times slower rate. Shows that do more than one show a week grow faster, 8 times faster than other shows. Shows that do audio, video, and blog grow 23 times faster than shows that do either audio or video only. So that just gives you a little hint where the space is heading. So of the 5,000 plus nominated shows, 4,300 were using our stat system over at Raw Voice. So I was able to have the guys go in and pull some data. And this is what, just real quickly, what we found. 82% of the audiences of those 4,300 shows were in the United States. 7% were in Canada, 5% in the UK. iTunes on average was 53% of the subscriber base. Browser, aka browser, could be Firefox, IE, Safari, any type of browser, still makes up the largest second share of views and listens. Other people are coming to your site and playing it right in the browser. For those shows that are distributed on Roku, Boxee, Samsung Smart TV, and Google TV, they were their audiences was about 6% of their total audience on those devices. The iPad was the number one mobile media consumption device via a browser. And for the shows that we could tell that had an app, less than 1% of the audiences were using apps that we can detect. So app usage for an actual show that had an app, very, very low utilization. Average of 93 clients per show. In other words, there's 93 different types of devices that are consuming. So that could be a BlackBerry, it could be an Android, it could be Google TV, any type of thing that can consume media. Average show had 93 clients consuming their media. Average number of countries was that had at least 10 listeners of those 4,300 was 106. So 106 countries of those 4,300 shows had at least 10 listeners or more, which is pretty crazy. So here's an interesting, just general fact that we saw. There was a very small fall off on listeners during the summer months this year. And usually June, July, August, we see this huge drop, and did not see that this year, which is really incredible because we normally see this, but it was just a minor drop this year. So don't leave your audiences in the blind during the summer months. So anyway, that's what I've got for kind of some quick stats on what we saw. I know you want me to talk about the slate, and we're going to get into that right now. I got to load the right page here and make sure that we're on the right one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move straight forward into the actual announcement. Again, over 5,000 shows nominated, whittled down to 220 shows. Some shows didn't make the slate simply because they didn't have an RSS feed on their website. Some shows didn't make the slate. You go into the rules and you look at our grading criteria, and there's a very specific things we look for that we feel that is our opinion of what makes a great podcast. Some shows were just barely under the mark, and a significant number of shows just barely under the mark on stuff that they're not doing. So if you're a podcaster and you're listening to this, take some of that data that I've just shared with you and improve your websites and make them better so that your audience members can have freer access to your content and be able to listen. You can almost be guaranteed if you go to every one of these shows that made the slate, you're going to see some things in common across all the shows. So let me go ahead and let's move into the actual nominees. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to start off with the best video podcast, and we'll go all the way through the 20 categories, and we'll cover the last two, People's Choice and Best Produced. Those are the top two categories at the end. But let's go ahead and drum roll, please. Let's go ahead and move right into Best Video Podcast. And the shows that made the slate this year, congratulations to Bleeding Edge TV, GeekBeat.tv, NASA Edge, Scam School, Tech Chop, TED Talks, The iPad Show, The Totally Rad Show, The Vergecast, and The Young Turks. Congratulations to those shows that made Best Video Podcast slate. Our next category, Business, Career Tools, Freakonomics, Livelihood Show, Manager Tools, Smart Passive Income Podcast, The Dave Ramsey Show, The Disciplined Investor, The Engaging Brand, The Townstone Financial Show, and the Wall Street Journal This Morning Podcast. Congratulations to those shows. In the comedy category, Beauty and the Beast, Citizen Radio, Comedy Bang Bang, Podcast, Metrobuzz, My Brother and Me, The Green Light Show, The Ramen Noodle, Walking the Room, WTF with Mark Rohn, Culture and Arts, Awakenings, Geek in the City, Old Time Radio Westerns, Opera Now, Sword and Laser, the China History Podcast, the History of World War II Podcast, The Moth, The Open Book, Audio Podcast, and Theater Geeks. In the education category, Caustic Soda, Day in Tech History, Ending Human Trafficking Podcast, Grammar Girl, Gunfighter Cast, Hardcore History, Smart People Podcast, the British History Podcast, the History Chicks, the Newbie Writers Podcast. In the entertainment category, Authentic Life Radio, Hollywood Babble On, NSFW, Once Podcast, RBR Weekly Wrestling Talk, Rob Has a Website, The Fringe Podcast, The Josie Show, The Manhattan Aaron Show, the unofficial One Piece Podcast. In food and drink, Alcoholwood, I guess I just destroyed that, Basic Brewing Radio, Dining with Doug and Karen, Mike and Tom Eat Snacks, Mommy Cocktail Hour, Should I Drink That, Spilled Milk, The Beerist, The Splendid Table, The Sporkful. In gaming, Bad Dice Podcast, Gamertag Radio, Giant Bombcast, Minecraft Me, Orange Lounge Radio, Rebel FM, The Geek Box, The Independent Characters, The Indoor Kids, The Rooster Teeth Podcast. In general category, DH Unplugged, Greetings from Nowhere, Internet Box Podcast, Night Lock Podcast, Philosophy in Action, Rebellion Radio, Secretly Timid, The Conversation Hub, The Higher Side Chats, The Other Side of Live. In GLBT, Bend Over and Take It, Cocktails and Cream Puffs, Feast of Fun, Foul Monkeys, Gay Sunday Brunch, Homoground, Ramble Redhead, Scream Queens, The Queen City Experience, Throwing Shade. In health and fitness, Get Fit Guy, Half Size Me, Iron Radio, Jillian Michaels Podcast, Nutrition Diva, Recovered, #1 Recovery Podcast, Superhuman Radio, The Marathon Show, The Mental Illness Happy Hour, and The Paleo Solution. In the mature category, Between the Sheets, Live on the Swing Set, Paging Dr. Nerdlove, PNS Explosion, Savage Love, Sex Nerd Sandra, The Adam Carolla Show, The Naughty Show, The Stuart Badasso Show, Vent Chat. In the movies and film category, Seventh Row Center, Doug Loves Movies, Film Sack, How Did This Get Made? Is It a Bicycle? Spill, Star Wars in Character, The Hollywood Outsider, We Hate Movies, Yes, It's Bad. In PodSafe Music, Americana Rock Mix, Beat Feed, Coverville, Freight Train Boogie, Irish and Celtic Music Podcast, James Van Adossel Show, Livewire Podcast Radio, Rundgren Radio, The Americana Music Show, The Captain Sib Show. In politics and news, Common Sense with Dan Carlin, Electric Politics, No Agenda, Slate Political Gabfest, The Best of the Left, The Bugle, The Majority Report, The Morning Stream, The Rachel Maddow Show, This Is Hell. In the religion and inspiration category, a survival guide for Christian men, Ardent Atheists, Cognitive Dissonance, boy, I cannot pronounce that to save my life, can I, folks? Encouraging others through Christ, Mars Hill Church Sermons. More Than One Lesson, Mormon Faircast, Reasonable Doubts, Strangers and Aliens, the Sci-Fi Christian. In the science category, Astronomy Cast, Mysterious Universe, NASA Science Cast, Paracast, Radiolab, Science Friday, Stuff to Blow Your Mind, Stuff You Should Know, The Naked Scientist, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. In the sports category, I think you guys should notice something here. I think ESPN, there's going to be a war on for votes. Well, anyway, in this category, CBSSports.com Fantasy Football, ESPN Fantasy Focus Baseball, ESPN Fantasy Focus Football, ESPN Fantasy Underground, ESPN Football Today, Golf Smarter, Locked On Jazz, Merrick and Wyszynski Show, Scarborough Wet Country, and Who Day Weekly. In the tech category, Build and Analyze, F5 Live, Google at a Glance, Podcatcher, Ruby Rogues, Stolen Droid Podcast, Tech Stuff, The Audacity to Podcast. This is only a test. Your website engineer. In the travel category, Amateur Traveler, Be Our Guest Podcast, Coaster Radio, Disney Park Podcast, Mouse Chat, Mouse Allergia, The Season Pass Podcast, Wednesday Show, WDW Radio, Wedway Radio. Okay, in our final two categories, this is where it really gets tough. And I tell you, everyone wants to win one of these two categories. And I think everyone did a good job this year in trying to essentially stay in the boundaries of nominating themselves in one of the top two categories and one of the actual lower categories. We only had 3 shows this year that, for some reason, told their audience to nominate them in every category. And we really couldn't tell where they belonged based on the votes because it looked like they just loaded the votes. So those 3 shows really lost out because they didn't make the cut. If they'd have focused on one category, they probably would have made the category. But don't ever tell your audience to nominate you in every category. It's kind of dumb. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead here and announce the last 2 categories. And we're going to go ahead and switch to Best Produced. Congratulations for these shows that have made the Slate Best of the Left, Caustic Soda, Dubious Intent, Gamertag Radio, Geekazine, Livelihood Show, Podcatcher, Polycast, The Fringe Podcast, and The Tribe. And for those that are trying to win the People's Choice Award, Bleeding Edge TV, Cocktails and Cream Puffs, ESPN Fantasy Focus Football, Internet Box, Manager Tools, Rooster Teeth Podcast, Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn, The Comedy Button, The Disciplined Investor, and The Majority Report. So congratulations to all 220 shows that made the slate. It is not a perfect process here on how we do this. It's the best process that we've really found over the past 8 years to do. We're going to open up voting on November 1st. Your audience can vote for your show every day. And what we really do here is this is where we kind of separate the men from the boys. I guess or the pros from the amateurs, or I don't know how we really want to phase this, but it's all about engagement. Many, many times, smaller shows have whipped butt on bigger shows. So I'm going to tell you, all of these numbers were relatively close this year. And a lot of great shows didn't make the cut because of just some simple things that they could do to make their websites better. And I tell you, it's an imperfect process, but it's the best we can do. And I congratulate all shows that have made the slate. I want to thank all of our sponsors here. It's really, really impressive that in the economy and the way the economy is right now, that we're able to make goal on getting the award, basically the money for the trophies. The trophies have been ordered, and all we're waiting now is for basically November 15th to know who the winners are. We are not going to announce the winners on November 15th. What we are going to do is we will have the award ceremony at New Media Expo. All right. And we want you to come out to the actual event and come to the award ceremony. Again, if your show just made the list, I need to hear from you within the next 5 days. podcast@podcastconnect.com. I need your name, your show name, and a telephone number to reach out to you, okay? But we're going to do the awards ceremony. We'll have it live. Don't worry, it'll be streamed. But on January 7th is when these 220 shows will find out who won. and we want you out in Vegas with us. I hope that you'll take time and consider to come out. It's a great event. This is a way for you to build your show, meet people in the industry. The folks over at New Media have really done a lot to shape the show this year so that bloggers, podcasters, and those that are streaming have a great set of tracks. The team over there has really worked to really make podcasters feel an integral part of that show, and I hope that you'll come out. I know it's right after the holidays, but ask the boss for a few days extra off. Come out January 6th through the 8th, and basically come out to Vegas and enjoy the New Media Expo. Come to the awards ceremony. We're going to have Leo Laporte there. He's going to be emceeing. We're obviously going to ask him to share some insights and stuff on his show. There's going to be lots of great networking opportunities. And, of course, a lot of the podcast companies that are in the space will be there. You can come talk to them. So definitely come out to New Media Expo for the Podcast Awards. Good luck in your voting period. This has been my pleasure to bring this to you today and announce this slate of winners. We will not have another live event until the Podcast Awards ceremony in Las Vegas. And just plan on coming, okay? Go ahead and block it out now. And basically, again, send me that email, and we're going to get you hooked up. And we want your audience to come and celebrate in the awards ceremony. And even if you don't win, you're going to have a great experience. You're going to be able to rub elbows with really the biggest shows in the space, share notes, do that networking thing, and really it's very valuable. So there's a link at podcastawards.com that's basically going to take you over to the New Media Expo website. Go ahead and click on that, get registered today, and we'll see you at New Media Expo for the Podcast Awards ceremony. Again, I have no actual official ties to New Media. I'm completely separate from them. We are looking for a sponsor for the actual award ceremony. So if your company wants to get some serious recognition, let us know. We want you to help us out and sponsor the actual award ceremony because we want to have poo-poos and booze and all the good stuff that goes along with the award ceremony. And that takes green dollars to make that happen. And we hope that you'll step in. We got the trophies. We're just looking for a sponsor for the award ceremony. Again, my name is Todd Cochrane. I'm the founder of the Podcast Awards. I want to thank you today for really hanging out here with me this evening. And I'm going to wrap the slate announcement up at this time. But everyone take care. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. We'll put the show up into replay. So if you missed some of the announcement, I'm going to go ahead and automatically replay the show if you want to watch it again. And we'll be doing a blog post with all these stats and data points over at podcastconnect.com as well. And again, it's been my pleasure bringing the show. And I haven't been watching the chat room, so I'll kind of get in there and catch up. But everyone take care. And from Honolulu, Hawaii, everyone take care. Aloha and good evening.